So every single day, you exhale about a kilogram of carbon dioxide.
Right.
Which, out here, walking around above ground, it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, the wind just carries it away.
Exactly. But I want you to imagine exhaling inside like a completely sealed limestone box.
Oh, wow.
Slowly, breath by breath, the humidity rises, the temperature climbs, and that carbon dioxide starts reacting with the moisture in the air.
Which is a terrible combination.
It really is. Your breath literally becomes a chemical weapon. So today, we're looking at this historical event where human awe-like, the simple, innocent act of standing in a room and breathing in wonder, nearly erased the greatest masterpiece of the ancient world in less than a decade.
The irony there is just it's almost too painful to invent.
Yeah.
You have this incredibly fragile time capsule that survives the end of the Ice Age. It survives the dawn of agriculture.
Right, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire.
Exactly, and 2 world wars. And it survives all of that simply because it was utterly isolated from the human body.
And then we found it.
And the moment we finally found it, our biological presence initiated its destruction. What's fascinating here is that this deep dive isn't just about ancient art or archaeology.
Right.
It's a profound look at the paradox of human curiosity. We are exploring a situation where the very act of observation becomes a destructive force.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission for this deep dive is to take you, the listener, right down a metaphorical 15-meter shaft into the absolute pitch-black dark of the Ice Age.
It's quite a journey.
It really is.
Yeah.
And we have a massive stack of sources today. We've got archaeological field notes, chemical preservation logs, and these amazing historical accounts of the Lascaux Cave paintings in France.
Which is just an incredible sight.
So we're going to reconstruct the immense, almost incomprehensible wonder of what was found on those stone walls. We'll dive into the actual biomechanics and the chemistry of how Ice Age humans created it. And then, grapple with the heartbreaking reality of what happened when modern humanity breathed its life into a 17,000-year-old sanctuary.
Keeping that 17,000-year timeline in your head is just, well, it's the crucial first step.
It's so hard to wrap your mind around.
It is. We are talking about voices reaching across a span of time so vast it completely defies modern historical comprehension.
Yeah.
It's a story anchored by this incredible sense of wonder, but with a permanent ache built right into the center of the narrative.
The timeline is staggering, for sure. But I actually want to start our clock much closer to home.
Okay.
September 12th, 1940.
Ah, yes.
The setting provides such a stark contrast to what they found. So we are near the village of Montagnac in the Dordogne region of southwestern France.
Right.
And this is September 1940, meaning France has recently fallen.
Yeah.
It is newly under Nazi occupation.
A very dark time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
World above ground is literally tearing itself apart. The anxiety in the air must have been suffocating.
Absolutely.
And in the middle of all this modern mechanized chaos, you have this 18-year-old kid named Marcel Ravidat just wandering the woods.
Just a normal teenager.
Right. And he comes across a depression in the ground, like a hole left by an uprooted tree.
An uprooted tree on a ridge known locally as the Lascaux Hill.
Yeah.
It is such a beautifully mundane, chaotic way for human history to completely alter its course.
A storm blows over a tree and boom.
Right. It pulls up the roots and exposes a fissure in the limestone karst topography. And of course, there's a wonderful, beloved piece of mythos tied to this specific moment.
Oh, the dog.
Yes, the story of the dog.
The legend of Robot the dog, which I have to say, I desperately wanted to be entirely true when I was reading the sources.
Well, the legend insists that Marcel was out walking his dog, Robot, and that the dog chased a rabbit, fell down into this hole and started whining, which prompted Marcel to mount a rescue mission.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is. But looking closely at the historical interviews and notes, however, that specific detail, the dog falling in and discovering the cave, was almost certainly an embellishment.
Oh, man. Really?
Yeah, Marcel likely added it later on when retelling the story to journalists. It gave the narrative a sort of cinematic charm.
I mean, I get it. It's a great story.
But while the dog might not have been the lead explorer, that slightly uncertain legend still kicks off the entire sequence of events.
Well, even if he just added the dog for flair, the reality of his actual motivation is just as wonderfully adolescent.
Right.
Marcel didn't look at that hole and think, an archaeological site.
Not at all.
He comes back a few days later with 3 of his friends, Jacques Marcel, Georges Agnel, and Simon Coancus. And they aren't looking for history.
They're looking for treasure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There was a local village legend about a secret tunnel that led to the nearby ruins of the Lascaux Manor. They genuinely thought there might be buried gold down there.
They were just frightened, thrilled teenagers looking for an adventure.
Yeah.
Seeking out buried treasure in a world that was otherwise incredibly restrictive and dark because of the occupation.
Such a wild contrast.
Yes. And you have to picture the geology of the Dordogne region to understand what they were actually facing.
Okay, break that down for me.
It's a karst landscape, meaning it's primarily porous limestone.
Right.
So over millions of years, slightly acidic rainwater seeps into the ground. It dissolves the rock and creates these massive, unpredictable subterranean networks.
Like Swiss cheese.
Exactly like Swiss cheese. So a hole in the ground there isn't just a divot, it's a potential doorway into a massive void.
So they decide to breach it. They actually widen the gap in the dirt, tearing away rocks and roots. They drop stones down into the dark to gauge the depth, listening for the echo. And then one by one, they lower themselves down this narrow, jagged, nearly vertical shaft.
Terrifying.
It's a drop of about 15 meters into the hillside. And their only light source is this crude grease lamp Marcel had cobbled together from a mechanic's grease gun and a piece of twine for a wick.
Talk about improvise.
I know, right? I was reading this and just trying to imagine the sensory experience of that descent.
Oh, it would be overwhelming.
You're leaving the sounds of the wind, the smell of the pine trees, and sliding into the damp, cold throat of the earth with a single sputtering flame.
The sensory deprivation is vital to understanding the magnitude of the discovery.
House.
As they slide down the scree slope, the ambient temperature drops and equalizes to about 13 degrees Celsius.
So about 55 degrees Fahrenheit.
Exactly. The air becomes heavy and completely still. The silence is absolute, the kind of thick silence that actually rings in your ears.
Wow.
They are leaving the familiar reality of 1940 and entering a geological vacuum.
Which brings us to the ultimate time jump. They hit the bottom of the shaft, they dust themselves off.
Right.
Marcel holds up that little improvised grease lamp. The flickering light pushes back the absolute dark, hits the stone wall, and illuminates the very first painted animal.
It gives you chills.
A massive sweeping line of ochre and charcoal. And I literally just had to put the notes down for a second because at that exact millisecond, those 4 teenagers became the first human beings in 17,000 years to look at that wall.
To put that chronological disconnect into perspective based on the geological data,
Yeah, please do.
the last person to stand in that specific chamber and look at those paintings did so before the end of the last major glacial period.
That is just insane to think about.
It is. This cave was sealed by natural rockfalls and shifting earth before the invention of farming,
Wow.
before the domestication of the horse, before the invention of the wheel, before metallurgy, before writing.
Before absolutely anything we categorize as human civilization.
Exactly. It waited in absolute undisturbed darkness for 170 centuries.
The longest silence humanity has ever kept. And what shatters me is what they found. Because remember, they were looking for a tunnel to an old manor house, maybe some medieval gold coins.
Quite a few trinkets.
But when that crude lamp illuminated the darkness, the light revealed a stampede.
When they looked up, they found themselves in a cavernous space shaped roughly like the hull of an overturned ship.
Oh, the Hall of the Bulls.
Yes, which is now famously known as the Hall of the Bulls. The walls weren't just decorated, they were kinetically alive.
That's a great way to put it.
Enormous bulls, wild horses, and stags, painted in vibrant blacks, reds, and yellows, surging across the undulating white calcite of the ceiling.
And our sources catalog an astonishing volume of art. We aren't talking about a single mural here.
Not at all.
They found roughly 600 individual paintings and nearly 1,500 engravings.
Massive.
And this spreads across a sprawling complex of galleries. Beyond the Hall of the Bulls, you have the Axial Gallery, the apse, the nave, the Chamber of Felines, and the shaft. It is an entire painted universe buried underground.
Historians and anthropologists often refer to Lascaux as the Sistine Chapel of the Ice Age.
I can totally see why.
The scale, the ambition, and the supreme confidence of what is on those walls completely demolish the patronizing preconceptions modern people tend to harbor about our ancient ancestors.
Yes. Here's where it gets really interesting because that preconception is so ingrained in us.
It really is.
When most of us hear cavemen or cave art, we immediately picture crude stick figures, right?
Right, like children's drawings.
A lopsided circle for a mammoth, a jagged line for a spear, drawn by grunting brutes dragging their knuckles.
Exactly.
But this art is breathtakingly sophisticated. It is observed, it is intentional, and it is pulsating with life.
Let's examine the specifics of that sophistication.
Please.
Take the scale of the work. In the Hall of the Bulls, there is a depiction of a black aurochs.
An aurochs is an extinct species of wild cattle, right?
Correct, a massive species that roamed Pleistocene Europe. That single painting is over 5 meters long.
5 meters, over 15 feet long.
Yes. It is the largest known animal depicted in all of Paleolithic cave art.
Painted on a curving cave ceiling. I mean, how do you even keep the proportions right when you're painting something that massive while standing right underneath it?
It requires immense spatial awareness and cognitive mapping. And they didn't just paint flat silhouettes.
No.
The artists utilized a technique that art historians today call twisted perspective.
Okay, the twisted perspective completely threw me. I really want you to break that down. Because at first glance, you might think it's just a mistake in how they drew it.
It looks like a biological impossibility, but it's actually a brilliant artistic choice.
How so?
Well, in a standard, rigid profile view, if you draw a bull perfectly from the side, you would only see one horn and one eye.
Right.
And the animal might look flat or static, but in twisted perspective, the body of the animal is shown in profile to give you the sense of motion and mass. But the head or the horns are rotated 90 degrees to face the viewer.
Oh, wow.
So both horns swing out toward you.
Wait, so you're telling me they fully understood how to draw a realistic profile, but they actively chose to break the rules of biology to make the image more impactful?
Precisely. It is an abstraction designed to convey the essence of the animal, not just its strict photographic reality.
That is wild.
Think of it like an ancient Picasso painting. They are giving you a multidimensional emotional experience of the bull. It gives the animals an incredible sense of vitality, as if they are turning their heads to look right through you as they run past.
And they took that three-dimensional idea even further by using the cave itself as the canvas. They didn't just look for flat spots. The sources describe how they would find natural bulges, cracks, and contours in the rock face, and they would paint the animals over those specific topological shapes.
Yes, the topology was key.
So a swelling bump in the limestone becomes the muscular haunch of a fleeing horse or the rounded belly of a pregnant stag. They were using the rock to give the animals actual physical volume.
Which implies they spent a significant amount of time just observing the cave walls in the flickering firelight.
Just watching the shadows.
Exactly, watching how the shadows danced over the bumps before they ever applied a single drop of pigment.
And speaking of pigment, the chemistry and preparation involved are just as impressive as the drawing.
Absolutely.
They weren't just picking up charred sticks from a campfire. They were mining and processing natural minerals.
They used iron oxides, like ochre, to create a whole spectrum of reds, yellows, and browns.
And manganese dioxide for their deep, vibrant blacks, right?
Correct.
But how do you get a dry mineral powder to stick to a damp cave wall for 17,000 years? I mean, they couldn't just rub a rock on the wall.
No, they had to create binders. They would grind these minerals down into a fine powder using stone mortars and pestles, and then mix them with mediums to create a paste or a liquid paint.
What kind of mediums?
We believe they used cave water, which is naturally rich in calcium carbonate, but they may have also used blood, animal fat, or even saliva to bind the pigment.
Which brings us to the biomechanics of how they actually painted, which absolutely blew my mind.
It's fascinating.
They weren't just using hairbrushes. The sources describe them essentially turning their own bodies into ancient airbrushes.
The technique is known as spit painting or blowing. They would take the processed liquid pigment into their mouths or place dry powder into a hollowed-out animal bone or reed and blow the pigment forcefully onto the wall. This allowed them to create soft, diffused edges, gradients of color, and those famous hand stencils we see in other caves from the period.
I just picture someone standing in the freezing dark, chewing on iron oxide and animal fat, and blowing it through a bird bone to create the perfect shading on a horse's mane.
It's incredible dedication.
The dedication is unreal.
Yeah.
And we know they were doing this in the pitch black, using animal fat lamps that barely put off more light than a candle.
And because some of these paintings, like that 5-meter aurochs we mentioned, are located high up on the walls and ceilings, far beyond human reach, the archaeological evidence shows they had to construct scaffolding.
Wait, actual scaffolding?
Yes, actual scaffolding. They found sockets cut into the rock walls where wooden beams were wedged to support platforms.
That is mind-blowing.
We are talking about an organized, dedicated, technologically capable society. that planned complex engineering projects in the dark just to create art.
You don't burn precious, hard-won animal fat and risk falling off a wooden scaffold in a pitch-black cave just to doodle because you're bored.
No, you certainly don't.
This was a massive expenditure of resources. It completely rewrites the narrative of who these people were.
It places this firmly in the Upper Paleolithic era, specifically the culture known as the Magdalenian.
Okay.
These were anatomically and intellectually modern humans. They were nomadic hunter-gatherers, tracking herds of reindeer and bison across a harsh glacial European landscape. But cognitively, they were us. They had the exact same brains, the same capacity for abstraction, language, and awe.
There was a famous quote mentioned in our sources attributed to Pablo Picasso.
Ah, yes.
The story goes that upon emerging from a painted cave in France, he looked at his companions and remarked, "We have learned nothing."
We have learned nothing. It's such a gut punch.
It really is. Our tools have changed. We use iPads and synthetic acrylics now instead of chewed ochre and limestone walls. But the fundamental human capacity for expression, the genius of translating life into art, hasn't improved in 17,000 years.
We just found different ways to do it.
Exactly. We just found different ways.
It is a profound realization. But it also leads us directly into the great agonizing frustration of Lascaux.
Right.
The artistry is undeniably masterful. We can look at the walls and clearly read the subjects. We know that is a horse falling backwards.
We know that's a stag swimming across a river.
Yes, we know that is an aurochs in full charge. We possess the visual vocabulary, but we have entirely lost the grammar.
Yeah.
We cannot hear their exact meaning.
We don't know the story they are telling. Which brings us to the most fiercely debated question in the sources.
Why?
Why? What was the incentive? Why go through the terrifying, exhausting process of doing this? And the sources are brutally honest here. We simply do not definitively know.
We don't. And what is endlessly debated in anthropological circles are the various theories proposed over the last 80 years to decode the motivation behind this immense communal effort.
Let's dig into some of those theories, but I want to put them to the test because some of them feel, well, a bit too convenient to me.
Okay, let's hear it.
What's the most common explanation?
The oldest and traditionally most common theory is sympathetic magic, often referred to as hunting magic.
Right, hunting magic.
The idea is that by painting the animals, by capturing their likeness on the wall, and sometimes even drawing spears or arrows sticking into them, the hunters believed they were exerting magical control over the animals.
So it was a ritual to ensure a successful and safe hunt in the real world.
Exactly.
Okay, I understand the logic. It's a harsh world. You want to tip the scales in your favor. But I have a massive problem with the hunting magic theory.
Which is?
If this was just a magical grocery list, why are they painting animals they didn't really eat?
That's a very good point.
The archaeological record shows the Magdalenians were primarily hunting and eating reindeer.
Yeah.
But reindeer are almost entirely absent from the walls of Lascaux.
Sure.
Instead, we see apex predators, massive bulls and horses. If it's just about getting dinner, why paint a dangerous bear or a lion?
That is the exact counter-argument that shifted the scientific consensus away from pure hunting magic.
Ah, okay.
The fauna on the walls does not match the fauna in their fire pits. This led anthropologists to view the cave not as a magical hunting ledger, but as a site for complex religious ritual or shamanic initiation.
A shamanic initiation.
Yes. Think about the cave itself. It is a sensory deprivation chamber. If you go deep enough, you lose your sense of time, your vision, your hearing.
Right.
It induces altered states of consciousness. The act of painting, or viewing the paintings by flickering firelight, could have been part of a shamanic trance, communicating with the spirit world, rather than just asking for meat.
Okay, that feels much closer to the truth. Like a spiritual or mythological center. What about the more mathematical theories? You mentioned something earlier about a star map.
Yes, the archaeoastronomy theory.
Archaeoastronomy.
Some researchers suggest that the specific groupings of animals and the mysterious dots and geometric signs painted alongside them represent a map of the Pleistocene night sky.
Like constellations.
Exactly. An ancient astronomical chart tracking constellations, lunar cycles, and the changing of the seasons, which would be vital for tracking animal migrations.
See, I have to push back on that one too.
Okay.
I find the star map theory incredibly poetic, but aren't we just projecting our modern scientific obsession with astronomy onto a culture that we barely understand?
It's a valid criticism.
Is there actual hard proof they were tracking constellations, or is a cluster of dots just...
Well, a cluster of dots, and modern academics are playing connect the dots to find a pattern they want to see.
It is a highly contested theory, precisely because of that risk of projection. We look for data, so we assume they were recording data.
Right. However, the recurring patterns of specific geometric signs do suggest a formalized system of information storage, even if it isn't a star map. But regardless of which theory you favor, the physical architecture of the cave itself gives us our most vital clue.
How so?
The deepest, hardest-to-reach images in Lascaux do not sit in the large communal spaces like the Hall of the Bulls.
Right, they're farther back.
They sit incredibly far back in the absolute terrifying dark.
The shaft.
Yes, the shaft. There is a famous, deeply enigmatic scene located in a section literally called the shaft. It's a literal drop-off, a dangerous vertical crack in the cave floor.
Super dangerous to access.
Extremely difficult. And down there, isolated from the grand sweeping herds of the upper galleries, there is a lone narrative scene.
What does it show?
It depicts a human figure, which is incredibly rare in Paleolithic art, by the way, falling backward.
A falling human.
Yes, but the human has the stylized head of a bird. He is falling in front of a massive bison that has been disemboweled by a spear. Below the man is a stick with a bird on top of it, and to the left, a rhinoceros is walking away.
A bird-headed man falling dead in front of a gutted bison, hidden at the bottom of a literal abyss, deep inside an already pitch-black cave.
Quite the image.
I mean, you do not paint that there for interior decoration. You don't put it there if you want a lot of people to casually walk by and admire your brushwork.
No. The extreme placement heavily implies a ceremonial, secretive, perhaps deeply sacred purpose. You have to consider the psychological toll it took to get there.
I really want you, the listener, to put yourself in their fur boots for a second.
Yes, imagine it.
Imagine the psychological weight of that journey. You leave the freezing daylight of Ice Age France. You walk deep into the throat of the earth. The temperature drops.
The air turns dead and still.
Yeah. The only sound of the universe is the scrape of your own breath and the hiss of burning animal fat.
Sure.
And then you have to lower yourself down a jagged claustrophobic shaft into a space where you can barely move, just to create this one specific terrifying image of death and transformation.
Right.
If this was just art for art's sake, they would have painted it on a sunny rock face outside. The inaccessibility is screaming at us.
Yeah.
The inaccessibility is part of the message.
If we synthesize all of this, the technical brilliance, the terrifying locations, the sheer expenditure of energy, it connects to something fundamental about human nature.
Which is?
It is the desire to leave a mark, to assert existence in a universe that is incredibly hostile and indifferent.
Yeah.
When you look at the walls of Lascaux, whether it's hunting magic, a shamanic vision, or a star map, you are looking at a 17,000-year-old assertion that says, we were here, we endured this world, we saw these animals, and we made them immortal.
And it worked. That is the miracle here. The time capsule survived. It survived the melting of the glaciers.
It did.
It survived the rise and fall of entire global empires, the Industrial Revolution, everything. And it survived for one very specific reason.
Because it was completely sealed off.
Exactly. Sealed off and forgotten by human beings.
It survived precisely because the human equation was removed. The cave regulated itself.
But once humanity found this miracle in September 1940, we simply couldn't help ourselves. The secret was too big.
Much too big.
Marcel Ravadat and his friends actually made a blood pact to guard their secret cave. But within days, they brought their old school teacher down there.
Naturally.
The teacher brought in a prehistorian, Henri Breuil. And suddenly, the greatest discovery of the century was out. We found it. And the moment the war ended, we invited the whole world in to marvel at it.
Which initiates the most tragic and agonizing chapter of this entire deep dive.
Yeah, it really does.
After the sheer devastation of the Second World War, Europe, and France in particular, had a desperate cultural hunger for continuity, for beauty.
For proof that human legacy meant something more than just destruction.
Precisely. Lascaux provided exactly that. It was a beacon of endurance. So, on July 14th, 1948, the File Day, the French government officially opened the cave to the public.
And the public rushed in. The sources note that they widened the entrance, built concrete stairs, installed heavy metal doors, and rigged up bright artificial lighting. At its peak, more than 1,000 visitors a day were filing through those narrow subterranean chambers. Over 1,000 people a day.
And this is where we have to dive into the exact environmental chemistry of the tragedy.
Right.
We need to understand why the cave was doomed the literal second they threw the doors open to the public. For 17,000 years, the environment inside Lascaux was locked in a delicate, perfectly balanced microclimate.
It was a sealed system.
Exactly. The rock temperature was a constant 13 degrees Celsius. The humidity was trapped at a near-perfect 98%. The carbon dioxide levels in the air were minuscule.
Okay.
The cave breathed, but it breathed on a slow geological timescale through microscopic pores in the rock.
Right.
But when you introduce 1,000 sweating, breathing, moving human bodies into a confined limestone space every single day, you aren't just opening a museum, you are introducing a biological storm.
This is the chemical weapon of human breath I mentioned at the very beginning.
Yes.
Let's break down the slow poisoning. What actually happens when 1,000 people breathe inside a limestone cave?
Every single visitor exhales warmth, moisture, and carbon dioxide. When carbon dioxide mixes with water vapor, which was rapidly accumulating from their breath and sweat, it creates carbonic acid.
Carbonic acid, so the air itself becomes slightly acidic.
Yes. And the walls of Lascaux are made of limestone, which is calcium carbonate. The carbonic acid in the humid air begins to dissolve the calcium carbonate in the rock walls.
Oh, no.
And when the air currents shift or the temperature fluctuates slightly because of the blazing hot artificial lamps they installed, that moisture evaporates.
Right.
And when it evaporates, the dissolved calcium carbonate precipitates back out of the solution and crystallizes on the surface of the rock.
Creating a layer of white crystals.
Exactly. It formed an opaque white veil of calcite crystals right over the top of the vibrant prehistoric pigments. The conservators called it the white sickness.
That's heartbreaking.
The paint wasn't just fading. It was being actively entombed by a chemical reaction triggered by human breath.
And the white sickness was only half the problem. You also had the heat from the artificial lights and the organic matter people were tracking in on their shoes, which triggered the green sickness.
The green sickness was a massive botanical bloom. You took a dark, sterile environment, introduced blazing hot electric lights, spiked the carbon dioxide levels, and added 1,000 people exhaling moisture and shedding skin cells and bacteria every day.
A perfect storm.
It was the perfect recipe for photosynthesis underground. Algae and fungi began to explode across the damp stone, creeping outward in aggressive green patches, consuming the organic binders that held the prehistoric paint to the wall.
It's like, well, imagine discovering an original, priceless, perfectly preserved Leonardo da Vinci sketch and deciding the best way to display it is to hang it inside a crowded public sauna with a heat lamp pointed at it.
That's a very apt analogy.
Every time someone gasps in awe at the beauty of the drawing, the moisture from their breath is literally dissolving the ink.
By the mid-1950s, less than a decade after it opened to the public, the damage was undeniable.
Yeah.
The algae was spreading, the calcite crystals were clouding the bowls, the entire ecosystem of the cave was experiencing a catastrophic collapse.
This is the absolute emotional core of this story for me, because there was no malice, none whatsoever.
No, not at all.
No one vandalized Lascaux. No one went down into the Hall of the Bulls with a sledgehammer or a can of spray paint.
Right.
The thousands of people who went down there were regular people, artists, historians, and tourists who came in complete reverence. They just want to stand in the presence of greatness.
Yeah.
And yet they were destroying it.
It was harmed by pure admiration.
The very act of looking was the weapon.
It forces us to confront the fact that our physical presence is not neutral. Our awe has an environmental footprint. The thing that was destroying the longest-lasting art in human history was the simple biological necessity of human breath. It's an agonizing paradox.
So you're the French government. You have the greatest archaeological treasure on the continent, a massive source of national pride and tourism revenue. And your top scientists are telling you that letting people see it is erasing it. A decision has to be made.
And the monumental weight of that decision fell to a man named André Malraux.
Okay.
In 1963, he was serving as France's Minister of Cultural Affairs under Charles de Gaulle. Malraux was not just a politician, he was a highly respected writer, an intellectual, and a passionate lover of art.
So he understood what was at stake.
He completely understood the profound cultural value of access, but he also understood the science, and he made the agonizing, highly controversial, but absolutely vital decision to shut Lascaux to the public.
Wow.
He evicted the modern world from the cave.
He had to play the villain to save the art. On April 18th, 1963, he locked the heavy metal doors, and the original cave has been strictly sealed ever since. Accessible to almost no one, except a tiny, highly vetted group of scientists and conservators wearing sterile suits who were only allowed in for a few minutes at a time to monitor the climate.
The intention was to let the cave heal. Closing the door should have been the end of the story.
It should have been.
It should have allowed the temperature to drop, the humidity to stabilize, and the cave to return to its pristine equilibrium.
But the sources reveal a brutal truth. Once you wake an environment like that up, you can't just put it back to bed.
Unfortunately not.
Breaking the seal in 1940 permanently altered the immune system of the cave. Even with the doors locked and the tourists gone, the cave was still fighting for its life.
The presence of human technology remained, and it proved to be a Trojan horse.
So,
To artificially maintain the ancient stasis, conservators relied on a complex climate control system to regulate temperature and air currents.
okay.
But in 2001, a decision was made to upgrade the machinery on the roof of the cave. The installation process subtly changed the air circulation patterns, creating microscopic warm spots. And this accidentally introduced an entirely new, devastating threat, a highly aggressive strain of mold called Fusarium solani.
So after surviving the Ice Age, the melting of the glaciers, and 1,000 tourists a day, it's brought to its knees by an air conditioning upgrade.
Basically, yes, the Fusarium mold bloomed across the walls with terrifying speed. It appeared as fuzzy, white mycelium patches that rapidly turned into dark, black spots, threatening to completely cover the painted galleries.
That is terrifying.
The conservators were forced to use heavy fungicides and antibiotics to beat it back, which then created resistant strains. Since the 2001 outbreak, the scientists at Lascaux have been locked in what the sources describe as a permanent, delicate emergency.
A permanent emergency.
They are essentially running an intensive care unit for a cave. They are constantly tweaking humidity levels, fighting back new strains of molds, and monitoring crystal formations.
Unbelievable.
It is an endless, exhausting battle just to keep the 17,000-year-old pigments from vanishing entirely. We cannot display it, and we are barely managing to save it.
So where does this leave us? Where does it leave the public? Because that innate human urge to share this wonder didn't just evaporate when André Malraux locked the door in 1963.
No, it didn't.
The French government realized they were trapped in a moral dilemma. They had an absolute obligation to protect the original artifact. But they also recognized that Lascaux belongs to the shared heritage of humanity.
It belongs to all of us.
Right. And the solution they came up with is honestly one of the most fascinating psychological pivots in the history of art preservation.
They turned to the concept of the perfect facsimile. Because the real Lascaux can never again withstand the breath of the masses, France embarked on an unprecedented project to build exact, millimeter-accurate copies.
And they didn't just do this once as a gimmick. They iterated on it over decades. First, they built Lascaux II, which opened in 1983.
Right next door, basically.
Yeah, they excavated a concrete bunker right into the same hillside, just 200 meters away from the original cave. They used laser mapping to recreate the exact three-dimensional contours of the two main galleries, the Hall of the Bulls and the Axo Gallery. Then, modern artists spent years painstakingly replicating every single stroke, every splatter of pigment, using the exact same natural iron oxides and manganese the Magdalenians used.
And as technology improved, the ambition expanded. They created Lascaux III, which is a modular, traveling exhibition of the most important scenes.
So people around the world could see it.
Exactly, designed to allow the art to be seen by people who could never travel to France. And finally, in 2016, they opened Lascaux IV.
Lascaux IV.
This is a massive, state-of-the-art interpretive center situated at the foot of the Lascaux Hill. It contains a near-complete, full-scale replica of the entire cave system.
Wow.
They used advanced 3D scanning, resin casting, and incredibly precise environmental controls to mimic the exact temperature, acoustics, and smell of the original cave.
That is wild.
Millions of people can now walk through the dark, feel the chill in the air, and experience the overwhelming awe of the art without ever putting the original at risk.
I want to pause here and really chew on this because it brings up a huge philosophical debate, and I think it's where the real meat of this story lies for us today.
Okay.
There is a quote in the source material from one of the lead designers of the Lascaux V replica. When asked if people would be disappointed that it wasn't the real thing, they stated it incredibly bluntly.
What did they say?
They said, "You see this or you see nothing."
It forces us to confront our very definitions of reality, experience, and the aura of authenticity.
So what does this all mean for us as consumers of history? If you buy a ticket, you go to Lascaux Cave, you walk through a perfectly engineered concrete tunnel, and you look up at a painting of a 5-meter black aurochs. But you know in your head that it was painted by a modern artist in 2015 using data from a laser scanner. Are you experiencing history? Or are you just at a highly educated amusement park? Is a perfect, lossless recording of an ancient echo still the echo?
That is the essential question. If you view the replica merely as a substitute, a fake designed to trick you or placate you, you might feel a sense of hollow disappointment.
Yeah, you might feel cheated.
You might view it as a sad consolation prize because you aren't standing in the literal footprints of the Ice Age hunters. But if we frame this within the broader context of preservation and human responsibility, the perspective shifts entirely.
How so?
The replica isn't a fake, it is a profound moral choice.
You call it a moral choice, but it's really a sacrifice. We are giving up our desire for the authentic tactile experience so the authentic thing can simply exist.
Precisely. We have deliberately replaced the original echo with a perfect recording because the original cannot survive our listening.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
The replicas are the only way to fulfill our cultural obligation to share the immense wonder of our shared human heritage without committing the ultimate crime of destroying the original artifact. It is a technological solution to a biological problem.
I love the way the source material brings this full circle at the very end. It traces the line all the way back to Marcel Ravidat and his 3 teenage friends on that hill in September 1940.
Oh, yes.
When they first slid down that shaft, lit their grease lamp, and realized what they had found, they made a blood pact. They swore to each other to guard their secret, to protect this incredible, fragile thing they had pulled out of the earth.
And they failed, inevitably, because the secret was simply too monumental to keep. The gravity of the art demanded to be seen.
Right.
But their initial instinct, the instinct to protect it from the world, was entirely correct.
Their instinct was pure. And now, decades later, after learning a brutal lesson about our own destructive footprint, the entire world has essentially had to make that exact same blood pact.
We protect Lascaux today by universally agreeing not to go in. We pay tribute to the genius of those ancient, brilliant artists by closing the heavy metal doors, stepping away, and leaving them in peace.
It is arguably the ultimate act of respect we can offer the past. Lascaux survives today, sealed, heavily monitored, and utterly empty. The bulls and the wild horses are still running across the dark calcite walls tonight, just as they have for 170 centuries, but they are seen by almost no one.
The oldest, most eloquent voice humanity ever found was slowly dying under the weight of our love.
Wow.
And the kindest, most fiercely protective thing we could finally do was let it speak to an empty room.
It's an incredibly moving trajectory. To take you on this journey, we started with a mundane, uprooted tree and a group of bored teenagers in a war-torn country.
Right.
We climbed down a 15-meter shaft into the longest silence in human history. We found a sprawling, masterful gallery of Ice Age art that proved our ancient ancestors possessed the exact same capacity for genius, observation, and beauty as we do. And then we watched, horrified, as our own breath and our own desperate need to be close to that beauty nearly erased it from existence, leading to an agonizing, permanent scientific battle for preservation.
It leaves us with a profound lesson about the inherent fragility of history. As a modern society, we often operate under the assumption that to appreciate something, we must possess it.
Right, we have to own it or see it.
We must hold it, see it with our own eyes, photograph it, walk through it. We equate access with appreciation. But the tragedy and the triumph of Lascaux teaches us that sometimes restraint is the highest possible form of appreciation.
That's powerful.
To truly protect the most precious, delicate echoes of our past, we have to learn how to check our own ego and learn how to listen from a distance.
And that leaves me with one final lingering thought for you to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We now know the exact mechanics of what our attention and our physical presence did to the art in Lascaux.
We certainly do.
We proved that human curiosity, no matter how pure the intention, can be inherently toxic to the deepest artifacts of time. So it makes you wonder, how many other fragile, pristine time capsules, how many other untouched echoes of the past are currently hidden out there in the absolute dark?
It's a haunting thought.
Buried under remote hillsides, sealed in limestone caverns, or locked deep within the melting ice. And if finding them means inevitably setting them on the path to their own destruction, might it actually be better for humanity and for the preservation of history itself if we never find them at all?